Okay, good morning, people. I am sat in the forest this morning, so this is a forest podcast, and I had a real urge to come and sit in this, just with the trees. And it was funny because the place that I wanted to go to this morning, the road was closed, and all of a sudden I had to go to one of the very first places I ever visited and sat under the trees and spoke to them when I moved here to where I live next to the coast. So I'm very grateful and fortunate that I get to have so many different forests to choose from just around my hometown. Okay, so today's podcast is called Unravelling My Patriarchy, and this is coming with a bit of a warning. I don't know if trigger warning is really the right word to use, but I will be speaking about my own personal experience with religion and like how things have changed for me and all of that. And as always with everything that I do, this is not about me trying to convince you about anything. This is about me sharing my own experience and me basically giving a piece of myself for you to witness so that you can make a choice that feels good for you. And I'm loving how my voice is going, right? So I think this is always the important thing when we are sharing truth. It is only ever my truth, right? It doesn't have to be your truth. That's the beauty of choice. We get to choose what we take and what we leave from whatever any person on this whole planet is saying. So I love that as a concept. Right, so let's start from the beginning. So earlier this month, I kind of put an intent out there. Well, I did put an intent out there. That it wasn't kind of. I was getting to the point where my frustration with the idea that I keep going back to the concept of God as a bearded dude in the sky was frustrating the fuck out of me. And that's just to put it mildly. So part of my journey over the last 12-13 years is all about deconditioning. It's really about like seeing myself and letting go of the things that I am needing to let go of so that I can step back into a more aligned version, a more like soul version of myself. And so earlier this month, I was literally in that space where I'm like my mission is to let go of this sky daddy thing, right? Like I'm done with this. It's not serving me. I keep bringing up parts of my past where I feel not worthy, parts of my past where I feel not good enough, all of that. And for me, it's very much tied to religion. It's very much tied to a space of how I was brought up. And it's not necessarily my parents, but it's like a societal construct of like how we should be behaving. Okay, so I'm an Afrikaans South African. I live in the UK now, and I grew up in a society where church was everything. We went to school, church was part of school. My family went to a different church than everyone else's family. So we went to what they call the Happy Clappy church, and everyone else was in a more staunch, like more demure church, right? So already that was an interesting concept to grow up in. But the principles of the Christian religion that basically surrounded me growing up was that I was a sinner. Everything I'm doing is basically to try and get myself out of this shit show of being born as a sinner, and it's probably going to be really hard. I'm never going to be good enough, and I'm basically meant to live in a place of struggle. Okay, that was my interpretation. I'm sure there's a lot of Christian people who don't feel like that, but that was how I saw it. That's how I internalized it. And so for me, growing up, a lot of our, like how we were meant to behave, being very pious, being very, like serious about life, all of that stuff just never felt right. And I really tried. I really tried to make it work. I did get to the point where I was baptized. I did like all the stuff, right? All the stuff. But it just didn't feel right. There was something missing, and I felt smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as life went on and as I grew up, and it just felt very much like I was in chains. And so after school, like, I basically stopped going to church when I moved out of my parents' house, and it just, I was like floating around in this place where I was like trying to figure out, like, who am I, what is this world about, all of that. And so, you know, life was quite chaotic, and there was a lot of stuff happening. But then in my 30s, after I met my husband, I think I calmed down a bit. I kind of like settled, and I knew, like, okay, gonna have babies now, like everything's gonna be good, like I can just chill. And then my inner searching, my inner quest started. And I started reading books, and I found out about reincarnation and the Akashic records and Buddhism and different religions and like all sorts of Eastern traditions, and so I got a little obsessed where I was like literally reading as much as I can, trying to learn as much as I can, and really getting into that space of like understanding like what's everyone else doing. Because what I knew is I knew Christianity from an Afrikaans South African perspective, but I didn't know what everyone else was doing. And so I really, over the last 12 years, I've gotten to that space where I educated myself. I went to indigenous tribes, I spoke to people, I sat with elders, I just did all this stuff just to understand what's everyone else doing, and most important, what do I want to do? How do I want to feel? Because the one theme that's running through like life is that there's a force, something bigger than us, and I think most people feel this, or I'm looking for something, and like how do I connect with that? How do I feel that? How do I basically get to experience it? And from my upbringing, it was very much like, well, like there's no chance in hell you're ever going to get there. Firstly, you have to go through like, you know, the priest, and he will basically make sure that it's okay, but you're basically never going to be good enough to get to heaven unless you're really, really, really strict with yourself and basically, you know, live the most pious life that you can imagine. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't feel right to me. The concept of me having to go through someone, the concept of living a life where God is basically telling me I'm a piece of shit and I'm not good enough and all of that, just really, like, it broke me. And so as I went through this process of understanding all of this, I realized that God is different for everyone, right? Like source, divine, whatever you want to call it, like this life force, this beautiful energy of divine love is different for all of us. And I remember going to Thailand in, I think it was like 2017 or 2018, I don't know, but it was like quite a while back. And I remember us being on our scooters with our friends, and it was beautiful, and we were in nature, and it was like forests and everything. And I remember stepping off the scooters and walking into this forest, and all of these beautiful statues and like all these like forest temples. And I remember stepping into it and going, oh, the forest is my temple. And I was like, what the hell does that even mean? Like, I don't understand it. But I was like, this is important. This is part of what I am needing to experience and to really connect with, for me to feel connection to all that is, to God, to source, to divine, whatever you want to call it, right? And I was just like, there's something here. And I was like, oh my goodness. So as I went to these beautiful shrines and temples and stuff in this forest, I was just like, oh, this feels so good to me. Okay, so moving on now, like many years later, 7-8 years later, I'm I'm in that space now where I have really worked hard at my connection to life force. I've really like understood like how to work with the earth. Moving to the UK, being able to be, as you can hear, the forests, like the wind's blowing, the birds are chirping, I'm sitting under these trees. It is pure magic. And it was for me a moment of like, I found my deepest connection with life in these spaces. I found my deepest connection with all that is in these spaces. And so this has become my church. This has become my temple. And so the reverence that I feel when I am in these spaces, the deep love that I feel, the non-judgment, the how I can see myself clearly as being part of like everything, part of these little sticks and the little leaves everywhere, and I mean, and the moss and everything. It's just like it's for me, this is my religious experience, right? Like this is where I am finding myself, and I'm like really seeing myself. And this is also where I find the moments of non-judgment, and this is where I find the moments of devotion and the moments of connection is in nature. So it was a real journey to get to this point, and also to admit to myself that part of the patriarchy within me was because of my religious upbringing, and because of how I was told that you know, you are a sinner, you're not good enough, all of that stuff. And nature's never said that to me. Nature said to me, messy is awesome. Nature said to me that you know, just things being a shit show is absolutely awesome. I mean, I'm gonna just put the camera on. Okay, I'm forgetting I'm on a podcast, but anyway. This is so funny. If I look around me right now, there's just like brambles everywhere. There's like old leaves on the floor. It's the messiest messy. The trees behind me are like gnarly and like beautiful and old and mossy and muddy and so much. And you know, nature teaches me that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay not to uphold this idealistic idea of how we should be showing up in the world, where in nature you just show up as you want. You show up wild, you show up without any makeup on, you show up like in your semi pajamas to go for a walk, right? It's like nature doesn't care about that. Okay, the forces underneath my feet does not care about that. The godliness around me does not care about that. And that is the beauty. So it feels to me like so much of what is happening in society right now, and especially as also, you know, as someone without a lineage, right? So as I've been visiting all the indigenous tribes, and I've seen so many beautiful lineages of real wisdom in South America, in Mexico, and all of these places that I've been to, in Egypt, all of that. So there's so many beautiful lineages, and I feel like because my lineage is obviously European, then moving to South Africa in the 1700s, but the ancient lineage is European. And because of what happened on this continent of Europe, and because of the decimation and the destruction of the real ancient wisdom, right? Like the wisdom that was held by the people of the land. And it's not necessarily just paganism, but it was really like it was land-based, like I'm feeling right now, right? Like when I say to you guys, my temple is here in the forest, that was what it was, right? And when I looked at my surname the other day, I was like, so it's Boshof, and Bos means forest in Afrikaans, and Hof is like a basically an enclosure, like a sacred space, right? And it's like forest, sacred space. And I was like, boom, head blown open. So, but that type of energy, that type of lineage, that type of way of living has been lost because of the church going and taking over spaces, eradicating that nature connection over many hundreds of years, your witch trials, all of that good stuff, not good stuff, all of that stuff that happened, right? So so there's no lineage for me to hold on to, and I've always, like, I look very closely at appropriation and those type of things, because, you know, as a European, I'm like, oh my goodness, you know, I have to respect that lineage is sacred to that people, but I have no lineage. I have nothing to, like, hold on to. But what I do have is I have nature. Okay, I have the wisdom of nature to hold on to. And so if I really break it all down, is that the lineage that I was seeking for so long, and the information that I received from all these beautiful elders and the books that I read and the research that I did and all of that, brought me back to this space where I realized that I can claim back this for myself. I can claim back my connection to the land. I can claim back my connection to nature and what is around me. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was away with Karen in a beautiful forest, and I'd gone into the forest and I was drumming by myself. And I remember drumming, and as I was drumming, I just saw all my ancestors coming out through the trees, like walking towards me through the trees. And I didn't understand at the time. I knew that I was being greeted back by my ancestors, but now looking back, I'm like, oh my goodness, like my ancestors welcomed me back to the temple of nature. So how incredible is it that we get to choose how we do life. We get to decide how we do life. And finding my inner temple within myself means that, you know, this nature journey made me find myself again. But you know, for everyone it's different, and if your temple is a building, and if your temple is a religion, then that is beautiful as well. And I feel like we need to understand that everyone has a different experience, everyone has a different expression, and we have to honor that. Okay, so this is not me saying, oh my goodness, because you go to church it's bad. I'm telling you about my experience and how I was able to find acceptance and love for myself back in nature. And that for me is important, because any religion that you participate in, allow yourself to connect with divine love, because I always see it like divine love is like a beautiful stream, right? Like it's like all these rays that come down, and it comes to us through teachings, it comes through us through like the different religions, whatever it is. But as long as your connection and your devotion and your temple leads you back to that divine love falling inside of yourself and you loving yourself more, that is absolutely perfect. So it's really important to understand that, like, at the end of the day, no matter how you get there, it is always the right way for you. And like, you need to own it, right? Like, for me, this is my temple. For me, this is my church. For me, this is the thing that deeply, deeply brings me back to myself and to oneness. And that's the point of it all. Okay. So I feel like that is everything that I needed to share about that. And that patriarchy piece is really really important, because if there's an element of you that feels coerced, if there's a part of you that feels restricted, if there's a part of you that does not feel free and worthy and connected in whatever you're doing and however you're doing life, you have to look at that. Because I realized so much of what I was doing was to be the good girl, was to be that pious example that I was shown, you know, in school, as to how she should behave, how she should be. And I chose to set her free. I chose to let her be wild. I chose to let her sit in the messy forest and be happy. Okay, so choose that. Whatever you choose happy, choose love. And yeah, that's my story. Okay, perfect. So I hope you enjoyed the bird sounds. I certainly have. And beautiful energy of my trees. So much gratitude. And I'll be back soon. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Pushyalandri Shubho Haryavase Lashyam Rasa